how many did dress? I see a lot more dress than obviously than came up on stage. Raise your hand if you dressed for Halloween this morning. Little something special. Okay. After the service is over, John, can we kind of get a group picture? Going to get candidates or what? Yeah, if you can, as soon as the service is over, make your way outside here, and we're just going to get one big group picture. We do need you to be quick out there because we have to come back in here and start tearing things down. But anyway, I love this. Somebody asked, "Are you a farmer?" I said, "I am Greg Tucker on a Monday," and this is this being in this outfit really is kind of my happy place. Well, we are moving down the road on the Bag of Hope Project train. BHP, you may be aware, is our ministry to children who the school district says they have crossed over into the distinction of homelessness, and we have taken that ministry on for I don't know how many years. 10, 12 years, 20. But we provide Christmas for them. It's a massive project, but it really does call for massive manpower in order to make that happen. So we have already had people setting up the shelves and starting to build our store out. What we're doing right now is bag prep. On Tuesday evening, we have organizations, different ones coming in, and they're going to take 10 bags, empty bags, 15 bags, 40 bags, whatever. They take them back to their company, and then they fill those. But our responsibility right now is to make sure those bags are ready. So we have the list of names. It's all confidential, but we have the list of names, and so we put a tag on each one of these. This is a 13-year-old little girl or a 7-year-old boy or whatever, and we make sure it goes on an empty bag. Shopping list goes inside, but we need help. We've gotten so much done, but we have about, I think, 100 more of those to do. So here is my ask. When service is over, if you could help us, it's at the corner of Lincoln and State College. Got it? Anaheim Town Square, and there's a Chipotle right there, and we are right next to Chipotle. It's space we have, and there's brown paper on the thing because it's not a store. You just make your way in there. If you could give us even most of an hour, I think we can knock that out in short order. So thank you in advance for that. Well, how many brought your Bibles to church? If you did hold them up, I think the sermon will always make more sense when you can follow along in your own Bible. And let's turn in those to Luke chapter 15 as we wrap up this series called Unstoppable Joy. This is number 5 in a 4-part series. We've talked about joy beyond grief, joy beyond loss, joy beyond chains and bondage, joy beyond worrying, suffering, and all these different things. And I thought, I really want one more that it's not focused on the problem. It's not a joy beyond kind of thing. And it's just talking about the wonder and the beauty of joy. And so this is in the story, I think, best told by Jesus, which we call the prodigal son. I don't know if you were ever into Saturday Night Live. I was and still am. Oh, I thought you were giving me a signal here. Okay, we're good. But I am a fan of Saturday Night Live still, but I recall one recurring sketch years ago that always caught my attention, and the name of it was Debbie Downer. Does anybody remember this? It involved a woman who, it was as if she was allergic to joy. She would be with her friends, and they would share some exciting good news, and it's like a black cloud would roll in, and she would just immediately respond to that good news by finding something at fault with that. Have you ever known someone like that? Someone who it's almost as if they're allergic to joy. The coffee's free, and they say, but it's too hot. Someone shares a story of a miracle that's happened, and they want to ask if it's medically verified. The pastor says, today the service is going to end early. I'm going to preach short, and they check their watch to verify to see if that's accurate. The rain finally falls. We need rain, don't we? And we finally get rain, and they talk about how that just ruined their weekend. Somebody gets baptized at church, and they're upset because water splashed on them. And let's be honest, sometimes those people are us. poor grammar notwithstanding. We talk about joy. We even sing about joy in here, but some days it's like we have a spiritual hay fever where every time God presents us with some blessing or something encouraging or something uplifting, we start sneezing reasons why it can't last. And I think that's why I love this story so much. This is Jesus showing us what joy looks like when you stop trying to control it and just let it run. Look at verse 11. Jesus begins, "A man had 2 sons. The younger says, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.'" And that culture, that pretty much meant, I wish you were dead. I am acting out as if you are deceased, and I want my inheritance and everything that comes along with that, and I'm going to set out on my own. And so it was quite an insult to the father, but somehow, surprisingly perhaps, the father says yes. He says, "I'm going to do that." So he divides the property, and he hands the kid his cut, and he watches as he walks away under the horizon there. And if you can picture this, this is a young man who has money in his pocket, adventure in his eyes, and not a clue in his head. Verse 13 says, he set off for a distant country and squandered his wealth in wild living. I think it's important sometimes to bring the original language into this, and I just want you to know that verse, that's Greek for he blew it all, just blew the whole mess. How many know money cannot buy happiness, but it can buy an awful lot of friends, right? Very true. This young man went chasing fun and lost everything that actually was enjoyable. He hit rock bottom starting at verse 14. It says, after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine. So now he's broke and hungry. Goes on to say, verse 15, that with no other options, he finally takes a job he finds someplace, slopping the pigs, feeding pigs. Now listen, for a Jewish kid, that would be insulting for anybody to have that kind of job, kind of demeaning, right? But for a Jewish young man, that wasn't just dirty, it was shameful. We have Jewish family members and who come in for Thanksgiving, love them to death. And but we make sure that we're not serving any kind of pork product or anything that would not be kosher. An observant Jew has never had bacon. The shame of that, right? But that's, so this guy to be working with the pigs, that's a loss for him. And so here this kid is knee deep in mud. He's staring at pig food, verse 16, and he starts thinking, actually, that stuff's looking pretty good to me. And then verse 17, the best line in the chapter. It says, when he came to his senses. I think everybody needs that verse at least once in their life. That what am I doing here moment? That wake-up call where you hear clearly from God, and the message is, you were not meant for this. You were not meant for this situation, this circumstance where you find yourself right now. And here is what he came to his sense about. He looks at the horrible situation he's in and realizes it does not have to be this way. That wasn't a statement of guilt. That wasn't a statement of self-pity. It was just crystal clear clarity. I don't have to be here. It doesn't have to be like this. In verse 17, in that circumstance, he recalls his father. He remembers that even the servants back home, the lowest of the low, even they have food to spare. And that one small thought becomes kind of the spark that turns everything around with him. You see, authentic joy always starts with the realization about how good God the Father is. So this young man, he stands up, brushes off what he can, and starts walking home that long journey. And while he's there, verse 18, he's practicing what he's going to say. Actually, let me back up to 17. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. 18. I will set out and go back to my father and say, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. Do you have a pretty good memory? If you're on the phone with somebody and they say, here's the number you want to call, are you able to receive that without writing it down and then saying goodbye, and then when you hang up, just immediately dial the correct number? That is not my gift. And when somebody gives me a number on a phone call like that, I just kind of preface it with saying, okay, I need you to give me that one more time, and I just want you to know I'm going to hang up on you immediately, because that's the only way this is going to happen, if it does happen. And so this young man, he's practicing his line as he's walking all the way back. He said, okay, Father, I sinned against heaven, against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. Now keep in mind, on this journey, he's still filthy, dirty, mud under the fingernails, robe caked in mud. Still smells like pigs. But now he's walking in the direction of joy. Right? It's where my Father is. Now, you might think by this time the old man doesn't want anything to do with his son, right? The boy shamed me. He turned his back on me. He left me, spent half of everything I own. We've had to work the land and such here by ourselves without him. But that's not what happens. Verse 20. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son. Can you believe that after everything this young man has done, that still day after day after day, his father, who never stopped loving him, would go out on the porch and would just stare at the horizon to see, is this the day? Maybe this is the day my boy's going to break that plane and going to come home. And it says then he ran to his son. As any kind of property owner, that was not very dignified to run. In fact, his men didn't really run back then. They wore the long robes, and it just wasn't built for running. It looked silly, but this father didn't care about dignity. He didn't care about his pride. He just cared about that filthy boy who was coming his direction. Verse 18 goes on. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Just hugs him tight. No, you go clean up first. No lecture. He just pulls him in as close as he can, mud, stink, and all. And that's a snapshot of grace. And when grace moves, joy shows up. Now listen, I get this part of the story a little too well. A number of years ago, I'm sure I told this story. I grew up visiting my Aunt Fern and Uncle Charlie on their farm there in Ashley, Illinois. Anybody from Ashley? No. Ashley is such a small town that the sign says, "Welcome to Ashley" on both sides. You just got, right on through there. Well, Uncle Charlie was a pig farmer. And my guess is almost none of you have had this experience of being on a pig farm. But I can still hear the clank of they had the little silo and little doors. Pigs could go around and they'd get their snout under there and eat. And then they'd go back and clank, clank. And you would just hear all of these clanks all the time. I recall that so clearly. I also remember the smell. It was this delightful blend of mud, sweat, manure, and red dye numbers. Some mystery item, but it's just all mixed together. In fact, I remember when I would go down there and visit, and when I would smell that, I just breathed it in like fine perfume. I just loved that smell. I loved Uncle Charlie, Aunt Fern, the whole thing. Funny thing was, true story, I didn't know that smell was stink until decades later. Penny Reno and I would take our small kids and we would drive through Norco, California, Horsetown, USA, it says. How many have ever been on the freeway by Norco? And it has kind of an aromatic signature to it. And I got my window down, just... And the whole time they are saying, Dad, you are sniffing and inhaling like it's your job, and we're throwing a fit back here. Please roll the window up. That smell is horrible. And I'm thinking, horrible? That smells like family. See, that's what joy does to you. When you have been around the Father's love long enough, what used to offend you starts to remind you of His grace. And the same smell that would make someone else gag all of a sudden brings you this degree of joy that can't be otherwise explained. Well, the Father doesn't just welcome him home. He throws a party, verse 22. Father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf. You know, they always had an animal that they were just feeding, just for occasions such as this. He said, bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For the son of mine was dead, but he's alive again. He was lost, and now he's found. So they began to celebrate, it says. Suddenly the grill is going. Neighbors are knocking on the door, bringing potluck stuff in, and servants are running around every which way, bringing out even more stuff. And the whole place just fills with music and laughter and celebration. And listen, that's where joy always wants to go. From a private experience, something that maybe you just are aware of, to public rejoicing. Meanwhile, verse 25 says the older brother, remember there are two sons. He's been out in the field all this time doing everything right. When he comes home from a hard day's work, he hears the music. From a distance, he gets closer, he smells the barbecue, and he's thinking, what is all this about? Verse 27. Somebody met him and said, here's what it's about. Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back now, safe and sound. But this brother, instead of rejoicing, instead of being joyful about that good news, instead he gets jealous. Verse 28, he got so mad about it that instead of joining the party, he wouldn't even go in the house. His father tries to coax him in, verse 29. But he said, the boy says, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never even gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. 30, but when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him? Translation, I'm the one who has been good and faithful and loyal this entire time, so why are you celebrating here the one who has not? And the father, verse 31, with that same patient tone says, my son, you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. but we had to celebrate because this brother of yours was dead. And he's alive again. In other words, you could have and should have been experiencing this kind of happiness all along. It's illustrating the fact that for you and for me, joy, it kind of leaks out onto the floor when we start to compare our situation with someone else's. And it should be mentioned, the older brother was not wrong. He had been faithful. He had been steady. He had been obedient, stayed around. But in that, he lost the ability to rejoice. It's as if one can be in the Father's house and still miss the Father's heart. That's what I mean by allergic to joy, like that Debbie Downer character, that when grace shows up, that instead of joining in, we have a negative reaction to it. And joy just drains out of you when you're thinking about who deserves it, instead of just joining the celebration. Of course, this story is about more than two brothers and one good dad. It's about God's kind of joy. The kind of joy which does not flinch at your filth. It doesn't panic at your failure. It doesn't end when the party's over. It's joy that outlives the mud you find yourself in, because God has the final word. And whatever you're going through, do not give up. This is not the end. Why? Because in the end, God wins. I think this is a part we forget sometimes as children of the King, that we have this secret weapon. What's that movie? It's the secret weapon. We have this secret weapon available to us. And the secret weapon is not pretending things are fine. It's not forcing a smile in the difficulty. It's not ignoring the mess and calling it faith. The secret weapon is in speaking his name. When you say Jesus, the atmosphere just shifts. Will you just say that name with me right now? Just say Jesus. Say it again. Jesus. Demons, when they hear that name, demons, those joy robbers, they flee. Fear gets quiet. Peace steps forward. And even death loses its sting. We had someone in the church last night who lost her 47-year-old brother. Woke up that morning, everything was business as usual, and by the time the evening rolled around, he was gone. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 55, the Apostle Paul writes, he says, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O grave, is your sting?" Do you know why the Apostle Paul can trash talk death? Because he knew whose name was backing him up. I read once about a guy who forgot the password to his own computer. Everything he needed, files, photos, family memories, they were right there in that cube, in that box. But he couldn't see any of that. Why? Because he could not get in. The one thing he did know, however, he remembered the password was a name. Geez, was it my mom's name? Was it my dad's name? Was it my best friend's name? Was it an enemy's name? My neighbor's name? He tried every combination he could think of, but nothing worked. He tried it for hours, and you know how that works. You get it a couple of times, and they say, you're going to wait 3 minutes, and then you're going to wait 5 minutes, and then, right on. And that evolved into months until one time, click. He typed a name, and the whole thing came to life. That's us sometimes, isn't it? You and I have access to all the power and the peace and the promises of God, but oftentimes we are locked out because we forget the name that opens it all. When you say, let's say it again, what's the name? Jesus. When you say his name, it's like entering that password. The system unlocks, the screen lights up, everything that was frozen starts moving again. The joy, the peace, the hope, they were there the entire time. We just needed to speak the name that opens it. Here's a challenge for you. Say his name more often. not where anybody can see it. Maybe you're just sitting in an intersection and thinking about what's going on, or a bill that's due, and just whisper, Jesus, I trust you. You're not announcing it to the world. You are just anchoring it more firmly in your heart. When you have a sense of gratitude, and you take a bite of even a simple meal, or you see a child laugh, or you find a parking spot that you didn't think you would get. Just, hey, Jesus, thank you for that. Man, I appreciate that, Lord. It turns an ordinary moment into a worship moment. When things in your life begin feeling very, very dark, when your thoughts are racing in a crazy pattern about this concern or that problem, just breathe in and say, Jesus, I just need you to hold me close here. Would you just hold me, Jesus? No long prayer, no fancy words, just his name. See, that's the secret weapon of joy. It's a name that carries power. And every time you say the name of Jesus, hell backs down and heaven steps up and life starts looking hopeful again. Friend, I encourage you, I implore you to get in the habit, not where anybody else can hear it, but saying the name, what is it? Jesus. Father, we thank you for the power of your word. We thank you for churches all across this country and various places around the world where we can read it openly, publicly. We can share it with others without fear of a rebuke or retribution. But hearing and reading and even studying your word, it's about like shoveling smoke if we don't apply it to our lives. I went back just not an hour ago and looked at, I think it was verse 21 again, when that boy was so beat up and downtrodden and in his filth and guilt and shame and all the rest. And the first word he said that unlocked everything was Father. He said, Father, it's me. I believe, Lord, that you promise, not just that you give, but that you promise joy, not giddiness, not silliness, maybe not even happiness, I don't know. That you promise deep joy for each one of your children. And it comes not by wishing about it, not by wanting it, not by thinking about praying. It comes when we say that sweet name. The one in whose name we pray. The one in whose name we cast away demons. The one in whose name you through us perform great miracles. The one in whose name sees us through time and time and time and time again, so many times in our lives where we're up at the front end of the deal with there ain't no way I'm going to get through this. But we cry out to the Lord. And sometimes we forget to look back and say, doggone, he did it again, didn't he? Teach us, Father, to realize the power of the word that unlocks it all.